Do you have there might be an option that you have to join, because if you can see it, maybe there's something that you need to do.
Like turn on her camera or something.
Yeah. Oh, it's on a YouTube. No, so you need to connect on Hangouts from that invite. Oh, okay. Okay. Because the other thing we could do is I could just go ahead with the stream and I could talk to you on the phone. Yeah, I could just do that.
Let me just then put you in touch because I'm gonna.
Okay, I'm gonna call you back in a second on WhatsApp. All right, bye.
Okay, now I can see her number. Okay, you can add her. Here you go. I started the chat and you can add her number.
Okay. Thanks.
Call me if you need.
Yep, got you now. Oh, okay, finally, okay. Yeah. Okay, we can just do it this way. Okay. All right, I'll figure it out later. For now, let's just get started on the screencast. Can you see the screen now? Are you still watching the YouTube video or the whatever it is, whatever it is that made you see me before? Okay, it doesn't show you the first slide. Okay, now. What does it show? Just blank. Okay. Yeah, there's all the old ones are still. Yeah. You see me? Okay. And I'm waving. Okay. All right. But you don't see my screen. Okay. Okay, I'll try again. Still no? Yeah, you should be seeing. Yeah, that's right. If you do it in Hangouts, not in YouTube, then yeah. So then it's an old link. Yeah, hang on. And what's the name of it? Does it say facilitation or does it say DD? Okay, yeah, that's an old link. So you want, yeah. Okay, cool. All right, now we can start. Okay, so yeah, just tell me actually a bit before we go into it. So what's uh have you gone out with your idea? Have you started to try some of these techniques yourself? Okay, but how much have you done? Yeah, I think you're getting, yeah, so maybe mute your computer. If you can mute yours, then yeah, there we go. Mhm. Okay, so you did a little bit. So you spent like what? So two short conversations then. Okay. Um, all right. So it's probably going to make sense to do a bit more before you facilitate. Just because going through the experience with your idea is going to help you. Um, it's just going to give you some sense of what's next, and then you'll be in a better position to answer questions. But when we go through the slides, I'll give you some tips as well on, and maybe we'll practice a little bit. So, okay, any questions you have before we go over the slides, or anything in particular you want to cover? Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. Okay. And which one were you with me on? Where was it? When was it? Was it yeah, that was at Euro Expo? Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So this is yeah, so this is the other end of that. That was the very, very beginning. So it's a lot that's different. Okay. Yeah, it's roughly the same stuff, right? So that's the idea is that, did you read the facilitator guide, by the way? The one on the forum? Okay. Yeah, so so this whole thing is designed so that you can kind of just hit next and like hit the next on your clicker and pretty much just read the slide out and just go with that kind of flow. It's meant to be, so it's a bit kind of slower than normal, but it just basically allows you to really not worry too much about preparing to know the slides as long as you know the rough arc. And you kind of know a few of the exercises, and there's like, there's a little joke in there and stuff. you're pretty good to go. So I wouldn't worry too much about memorizing exact each slide progression. Okay, so let's go. So this is just like an intro slide, like while people are coming in the room. Here we pretty much when I've been introducing ISIC and Source, the only thing I really do here is I don't try and sell the organization because it's too soon for that. All I do is I just say a few things about them that give deep dive credibility. So from the point of view of somebody there, all I'm really saying is, hey, ISIC has been around for years, and it's a student organization that is all about empowering leadership. And we do things like some of our big values are around helping people develop self-awareness and being solution-oriented, right? And so that's enough just to sort of say, okay, these guys have relevance to this experience. And then Source designs startup education for different types of entrepreneurs all over the world, and works in some very interesting and different contexts and on lots of different continents. So that just again gives this some credibility. And then you might also say that this was designed based on something that Source had developed for Oxford University, if that's something that you think will impress and just set yourselves up and set up the workshop for yeah. And the other thing that's worth saying here is just to set expectations that you're not an expert entrepreneur, that you are a facilitator, and you've just gone through this process and you've found it useful, and now you're here to guide people through the same process, so that they don't start really. One of the big things is you want to set this tone of like, hey, we're all like figuring this out together. And that's a big part of entrepreneurship culture anyways, it's very rare that somebody knows the answers. It's very rare that the stuff you learn in university actually equips you to be an entrepreneur. What's really equips you to be an entrepreneur is this attitude of let's figure it out. And it's a lot of people who get together who help each other do that. And that's really what entrepreneur culture feels like. And so it's even worth saying that up front here, just to say like, that's what we're doing today. As a facilitator, I'm just here to take you through this journey today, but we're all here to figure it out together. And then so you cover what you learn. So really it falls into these two categories. Again, you can just read this off, so today you'll learn what it's like to be in startup, and you're going to pick up a few handy skills to get your idea going. And we're going to cover, the day will be split into 4 different sections covering thinking like an entrepreneur, and then 3 different skills that are actually very useful. So understanding needs, figuring out a product, and deciding how to make money. Again, just read these ones off. So the purpose of this slide and the next one is to, this gives people some insight into what a startup actually means if they didn't know this already. But then to say that we're relaxing the term today is to relax them as well, and to sort of say, it's okay if you're not doing that, because today it's just about a new business idea, to make them feel like whatever their idea is okay. And that's a big part of the tone, again, is just this encouraging, inclusive tone, that we're all figuring this out together. Now each major section starts with the word goal, a slide that looks like this, and it ends with lesson learned. And that just helps set up in their mind what they have to do next. So, for the next hour, we're really going to learn to think like entrepreneurs. But to think like entrepreneurs, we have to reflect on how we think now and what we need to change in the way we think in order to be better at being an entrepreneur. These ones, and you notice top right, anytime there's something in the top right, that's a reminder that there's some interaction that you should do with the audience. If it's a blank slide, it just means make the point and hit next. So as soon as you made the point, you don't need to worry about, did I need to do anything else? As long as you've covered what's on that slide, just hit the next button. So here you just ask who has business experience, who has experienced founders, and we're just trying to open up the room here and get people to put their hands up and to think, okay, do I know, to start to think of people. And then we go to the next slide. Some people might tell a story or 2 here. That's cool. You get them talking a little bit. Once 1 or 2 people have said, move on. What's the difference in mindset between a first-time founder and an experienced founder? What's important to them? And again, it's very important to, whatever people say, is right, because the purpose here isn't to like have the right answer. The purpose here is to reflect on what you believe and what your experience is and what you know, right? So anybody sharing their experience, you can quiz them a little bit on it, but it's really just about them sharing, and some people will say things that are completely contradictory to the rest of the day at this point, and that's okay, because they're starting to think about this question. And then what will happen over the next questions is we're going to kind of lead them down a path. So who values their ideas more? Is it first-time entrepreneurs or experienced entrepreneurs? And who values their time more? And so here, you know, most people go, oh, yeah, experienced entrepreneurs, right? And then a few people explain why. And again, you just encourage that whatever aspect of what they're saying you believe to be correct, just be like, yeah, that's great. You've got it. You might expand on that a little bit, but you're trying to be encouraging. So now we start to really piece this apart. First timers tend to feel like their business ideas are valuable and need to be protected. Is this true with the first time founders, you know? So again, getting them to reflect. And usually you're going to start to get a lot more yeses here if so far they've been going down the wrong angle here. And then experienced founders have too many ideas and not enough time. They evolve ideas quickly to make sure they've invested in something that'll work. Is this true for the experienced founders, you know? And again, you're just piecing this, just going step by step in their minds and allowing them to piece this apart. Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, are you still there? Okay, cool. Sorry, I needed to take a few notes here because I just noticed some wording that I can improve to make it clear. So this stage, it's been all reflection, and you've really just been sort of driving this group discussion. And part of the idea of the intensity of the workshop and the interactivity is that we're slowly building this up here. At first, you know, it's just a show of hands who knows some experienced founders, and then they're really starting to talk to each other about, and through your facilitation, about the real difference between first timers and experience, and then started to get the point that actually first timers value their ideas too much compared to experienced founders, and experienced founders value their time. So it's all about doing things quickly. And then we sort of cut away, and we just say, so just cut through these misconceptions about how to start. So these are the important point here is again, we're trying to be inclusive and sort of make entrepreneurship accessible to them. So you're saying, hey, you don't need to have a great idea to start. You don't need to protect your idea. You don't need to learn anything new before you start, and you don't need to take big risks. These are all misconceptions, and these are things that should not stop you. You can start with a bad idea, not protect it, and learn as you go, and you can minimize your risk by thinking like an entrepreneur. All right, so sort of encouraging them that way. And so here, I like to say, has anybody learned to ride a bike from a diagram? Right, and so it's just sort of, they can sort of tell the point that's coming here, right? No, hang on a second. Right, you learn by doing, and being an entrepreneur is like riding a bike. You also learn by doing. So today, we're really going to focus about how expert and experienced entrepreneurs really know how to use their time well. And And really the thing we're going to do there is use time limits to learn pace and rhythm. So this whole thing has been building up to this point about being really good with your time is an entrepreneur skill. And this is where today, like, we're going to crank up the pace on you. Any questions? Now on this slide and on most slides, on every slide, if you hit a capital P, it will open up to speaker notes. And now a lot of the slides just don't have speaker notes yet, and we'll add them as we go. But the any question slides, they have speaker notes, and the bug here right now. But if you look at like why, basically to the right of each one of these things is a link to a video. So why launch unbiased opinion? As soon as the mouse hovers over opinion, and then to the right, you'll see the cursor changes, and I'll make those proper links. But all of these are videos of entrepreneurs talking. They're all about 5 minutes. And it's worth, and if you go to more videos here, you can, you'll get a link to, there's about 40 of them in total. But if you watch some of these are just in case you get a question that is like an entrepreneur really needs to answer that. So say, I'm not an entrepreneur, but you know what? We have a short video on a few entrepreneurs dealing with this. And then, and so I've used these in most cases. Actually, in every case, I've now got it to the point where the question could be answered by watching one of these videos. But generally, like first customer contact is a video that we're going to include in here later. So anyway, here's just a reminder to ask any questions. Then I move on. So at the first stage of your business, you only need to get two things right: your vision, your starting point. You cover what is the vision, and then we say, okay, grab. Now this slide is really just an action, 90 seconds. At the top there, you see it says 90 seconds. If you click it, it should open a timer. Okay, so maybe there's there's a bug here as well. So the way to get your timer working is you see this e.ggtimer.com/ and then you put in the amount of time. Or if you want, you can use like a timer app on in your OS as well. I'll note the timer bug as well. I'll try and fix it by the time you're up. But here the point is just to get we're starting by setting a timer just for people to get the feeling of it. But also this is a chance for you to now distribute felt and paper, so they all have that in their hands, so that when we hit the exercise right after this upcoming video, that you're not messing around trying to give people paper and pens. So there's sort of lots of step-by-step stuff in these slides you'll have seen. So every time we're going to do a video, there'll be like an introduction slide that allows you to just sort of hit the big points of who they are. So this is the guy who basically made microfinance and got a Nobel Peace Prize for it. And then you hit the video. And then because they have the paper and pen in their hands, you get another 2-minute timer and you say, now write down your vision on paper with a felt. So fill in the blanks. I want to help a wide group of people achieve something important in their life. So these green bits are the blanks, and they replace it with whatever their vision is, but they want to describe it using this whole sentence on one piece of paper. And ask them to write it like big here. And now we're going to explain team formation. So each person will have 30 seconds. You just can talk this through point by point. Then you'll post your sheet on the wall. Then teams must be 3 to 5 people, and you'll have 20 minutes to talk to people about their ideas and join a team. Next slide. Let's start presenting who's first, and you give people 30 seconds each to present. Now, this gambit is one where, so this is kind of like, it's a setup, so you have to know the story. But basically the idea here is when you let a kid make a sandwich, they just put a whole bunch of stuff they like into it. They get really excited because you've let them make a sandwich. And they combine a whole bunch of good ideas into a bad idea. So here you're just you're pretty much just saying, hey, when you let a kid make a sandwich and it's good to sell it a little bit, right? Go salami, peanut butter, salt and pepper, and just start thinking of lots of random ingredients, and then what happens? It's disgusting, and they give it back to you. So the lesson here is don't turn a bunch of good ideas into a bad idea. Don't make a kid sandwich out of your ideas. Right? So don't start combining all of your different visions into this one messy vision. That's not going to work. Keep the vision simple, and work with somebody else's vision for today if you need to. And then you set them off 20 minutes to find their team. So once they've had their 20 minutes, you pull them back together and you say, okay, great. Big important message here. All ideas are bad ideas before they're launched. So all of your ideas right now are already, I can tell you, they're bad ideas. But they always get better when you learn and adapt. So that's what we're really going to do. So now we're going to move from vision to starting point. The other thing you need to get right, and your starting point is a match between your and you talk this through, right? And then this one, this is all self-explanatory, I think. Can I skip through these ones? Because or go faster here? Yeah, right. So again, you're questioning them, and then not even just university students, it's Harvard students. It was very specific, right? And then Amazon, they didn't sell everything, they just sold books. And the key to know that it was a good starting point was that this whole idea of market pull. So again, these slides are designed that you can kind of read them. And there's certain emphasis so you can either emphasize market pull here, or you can say that they're investing time, money, and reputation to move your project forward. Then we go on to Derek. So I can send you, actually between now and his book is really good. It takes about an hour to read. I can send you his book to get a better sense of him if you'd like. But then you play this video where he tells his story, and then we quiz people on the video. So what was Derek's vision? Does anybody remember? And then this is exactly what he said: help musicians do whatever they need to release their CD. So you can see he was really orienting around the customer here. But then what was his starting point? And people will some people might get it. This one's a bit harder. Some people say that he made websites for people, or they wouldn't have quite clicked. And it's like, no, he had his own website already for his band, and his product was actually just a link added at the bottom of his page. That was his starting point, and that was enough that customers were chasing him. And then the big message towards the end of the video is about persistence. So I usually repeat this point, and then persistence doesn't look like this, it looks like this, right? So you're not hammering things, you're not hammering the same thing until you get there. You are trying a whole bunch of different stuff. So with that said, whatever your idea is, the best thing to do is just start it, but then keep trying different starting points if that one doesn't work. So now we take 2 minutes to come up with a specific idea. So again, a new piece of paper, fill in the blanks. As a specific customer type, I need a product so that I can hit a goal in my life. And so they want to fill in the blanks here. The point here as a facilitator is you're going from very big vision to like, this is how I want to change the world, to the very specific starting point. And you're getting them to think through, what is the goal in the customer's life that this product helps them do? Then we move on to explain that today's exercise, we're going to basically limit the products, not to apps, not to anything interactive or complicated to make, but simple information products, because information products are a good first step for most businesses because they help you build a customer base. They're easy to change. If you're orienting it around a goal in their life, in the customer's life, chances are you can help them with information, and it might not be an expensive product, but it's still one that they'll pay for if you've got the right idea that connects to what they need. And so, yeah, so your information product helps you do that something. So now we update that idea. So the thing they just wrote, that product part, you say change the product to some kind of information product. And here are just some examples. It can be a different type of information product if you want, but you want something that's simple to create. And then we wrap up. So it's a lesson slide, and we're sort of setting up that it involves exploration and discovery. You know when to persist, and you know when to look for another way. Yeah, any questions? Break. And so actually, Johanna, do you have any questions so far? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So sometimes no, but a lot of, like most ideas can be, especially if you're orienting it around, especially if it's some kind of like tech startup or web startup idea. Typically, those are all some form of information system. They're just more complex than a PDF. But if you take the typical web startup idea, or you start with a customer orientation, then chances are you can find an information product that is sellable that helps them achieve that thing. And if somebody really pushes you, then make the point around that, the whole idea of persistence, right? So if you're getting stuck on your one idea of what the product should be, you're doing the thing that Derek Sivers is warning against, that most successful entrepreneurs know not to do, right? They're not trying to figure out what their starting point should be. They're assuming they already know what their starting point should be. Right. So yeah, I might push back a little bit that way, but encourage them. Find again the part that's right about what their idea is. So, so for example, like if somebody had the idea for Uber, right? Like the main idea there is that it requires some tech and some network so that you can push a button and have a taxi arrive very shortly. That one might be more difficult to turn into an information product. But if you're really aligning it around a customer's needs, you would say, well, what does that customer really want? Right? What goal are they achieving in their life by using Uber? Are they doing it to save money? Is it a convenient way to travel? Okay, so they're moving around the city and they just want to do that more conveniently. All right, is there a way that you can provide them some information that allows them to move around the city more conveniently? Right, so you know, maybe it's a listing of, you know, depending on the city, of the best taxi companies, right? So like in Sofia, when people come, you sort of tell them about OK Taxi and Yellow Taxi and the green taxis, and you're like, those are the good companies. The rest, they might be good, but they might rip you off. But even having a listing of what are the good taxi companies and their phone numbers is a useful product, right? So that kind of orientation is what you're aiming for. It unnecessarily limits the possibilities of a product for today, but it increases the chance that if you're on the right track, that you're going to make money off it today. And that's the important thing, is that it's a stepping stone business. And it's a good one to learn skills quickly. So all of those arguments are ones that you can use. Does that help? Right. Okay. Okay, so now we move on to the skills part. So understanding customers' needs. This is really the main event of the day. Again, so we're going to learn from customers to design your product. And sometimes I like to emphasize here, this is before you have a product. You can still learn from customers, learn things from them that will help you design. Excuse me. Okay, so what we're going to cover in this section: asking the right questions, what to listen for, how to analyze. And then you can cover 3 types of learning: So observation, investigation, and experimentation. You can break down learning into these 3 types, and this exists in all kinds of different places. I might even just add a helper slide here. So same with science. Science looks like this. Same with spies. And it's the same with selling. So each one you just sort of go through and lay out an example. So with spies, I like to just sort of. Okay, so with intelligence, in the intelligence business, you have a layer of detection. So you have fact collectors, and they're just collecting information. And then from that information, eyebrows get raised, and then an investigation happens. And then sometimes a response is necessary, or an intervention. So this is similar to like observe and detect, right? Are roughly the same here, where you're just, so if you're like the NSA, you're just recording all of this information, right? And so then the idea is that you're analyzing it to detect any anomalies, and then within those anomalies, you might go, okay, well, we need to know more. So then you dip in and you investigate. And then if you find something that you need to know more about, or you need to intervene, then there's that intervention. It's not, so the point I usually make here, the rhetorical point, is it's not like spy movies. There's no one person who holds all of the answers and has all the information and can come to conclusions and then react. These are actually separate by design in the real world. Right, and then with selling, researching the customer, choosing which customer to go sell to. Then even when you go in, you're still investigating, you're still asking questions, you're still learning more about them before you try and close the deal. And of course, if you just went to go in and try and close the deal without even understanding who the customer was or whether or not you should be trying to sell them, you wouldn't get very far. And then for new businesses, first thing is finding the right customer, understanding their needs once we're in front of them, and then do we have the right product? So designing a product for them. So then you get into this. So this is the USB key story. So I just made a quick video here. So again, I'm just being featured as an entrepreneur here. So this business eventually was successful, but I'm telling you the story. There's an implication here. He thought he had the answers. And again, this is trying to meet them where they are, sort of to see an example of somebody who succeeded only by realizing that they were wrong. And this sets up the whole, when the customer described the product to each other and I overheard it, then I really understood what I did. And they called it the USB drive problem. So then when you recap here, you just point out that actually, once you hear the customer's words properly, all of these 3 things, you can get them right, even if you didn't get them right before. And it's good if you can remember to. This is one where you can ask, like, hey, so how did Salim's sales pitch change? Right. So, oh, it's a USB drive problem. Okay. How did the product change? Stop charging for printing. How did the customer change? He went from 5-star to 2-star hotels. Right, so Salim had the wrong product because he had the wrong customer. And so yeah, again, if you forget to do that here, you can then go over here, right? So start at the bottom. Did he find the right customer? Who was it? Understand their needs, USB drive problem. Right product was to make printing free. So then running experience without first understanding is like shooting blind. How do we make sure our hours are on target? How do we learn what really matters to our customer from the start? You focus on getting the facts. Hard facts are like landmarks. You know where to go, so you know to decide. If you know where you are, then you can decide where to go. And the way you get facts is with actionable questions. They give you facts you can act on. They give you an understanding of the customer so that you can respond with the right product. So that's a big point. is that you're learning because you don't know what your product should be yet. 3 rules for actionable questions. So you go over these, and then you recap fast fact specific. So this gives an easy mnemonic for people to remember. Just sort of repeating this point here, and then the zoom out. The big point here is that we're observing and we're investigating here. We're not experimenting. We're not trying our ideas out yet. We're really just talking about their life and really learning. You also need conversation starter questions. So these can be really easy. It just gets them talking about something in their life, give them a few examples. Point here on if somebody doesn't want to talk to you at this point, it's good information because it tells you that you're on the wrong track. And describe it a different way or focus on a slightly different goal or a totally different goal. And then sometimes you'll need to build credibility. So it's like, why are you asking me these questions? Otherwise they don't want to talk to you because why should they? And so these are ideas of just saying I'm from a university or I'm an entrepreneur. These are 2 ways to like those 2 things give you enough credibility that usually people will stop and talk to you for a bit, because it's like now you're somebody who knows what they're doing and can possibly help. And if they're interested in that goal in their life, it's probably worth 2 minutes for them to talk to somebody who is credible enough to be able to make that better. So you use conversation starters and then you use actionable questions. Now you might not have noticed this yet, but you might if you give these a bit of practice. But conversation starters get your momentum going, and then actionable questions direct the conversation. You don't want to start with actionable questions. You usually want to start with a starter. And then you make a point here about exploration. So then we do this example of, let's say we have a research on new regional local food products, and we're interviewing a supermarket manager. So we walk into a supermarket and we talk to this guy. So he's in the conversation. Hey, how are you going? So normally I just read these out as if I'm talking to him. And then I ask, so I say, like, you guys, I need you to call out, is it an actionable question or a bad question? Now these slides are all basically designed for you to just read out and hit the next. So can you please tell me the last time you introduced a new product? Where did it start? And because it has this actionable tag, you just remind you to, so guys, call out, is this actionable or is this a bad question? And then they call it out, whatever they call out, then you just hit next and you're like, yeah, this is actually actionable. This is what he said. We hear about new products, blah, 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 and then next. So does this happen frequently? Guys, is this actionable or is this bad? Quickly, just like you try and inject energy here and get them to yell out. And oh no, this one is bad. You just said not really. And sometimes it's worth going back like in the later ones. But anyway, does this happen frequently? Not really. Okay. So what are the 3 rules for actionable questions? You ask them, you ask the audience, and there's past fact specific. And then you go, okay, well, let's fix this and try again. Past fact specific. How can we make this question better? And you get people to try different questions. And again, as long as they're getting on the right track, you encourage them. But if they're not quite there, push them a bit further, right? So, and just always apply this this rule to it. And if you ever just get stuck, move on to the next slide. Okay, what about this question? When does this pop up? Is this actionable or no? And get them to call out. Oh, you answered not too often. So we're not getting anywhere, right? It's still too general. We want the specifics. Next slide. When was the last time this went off track? Is this an actionable question or not actionable? Again, okay, this was good. This is better. We're getting good information here. And he tells us his story. Right, and now we found a problem. Go deeper. So is this an actionable question from there or not? And then people say, we don't. Okay, let's fix it again. How can we fix this? And again, you're just encouraging them to do past specific rule. And usually this then leads to last time. If it doesn't, you still have the question in the next slide. So how did you deal with this last time? Is this actionable or not? yay, this one is. And you make a point here, see what asking for specifics can reveal. Right? So now we're learning, knowing what they tried, blah, blah, blah. Can you show us how you did it, actionable or not? And this one's a trick question because it doesn't meet the 3 rules of an actual question, but it is observation. So yeah, so you make that point here. Why did you go to the farm? Is this actionable or not? This is a good one because it helps the learner. It makes you thinking like an apprentice. So you're putting yourself in the mind of a learner and you're really trying to understand. So that's a good one. And we see his answer is actually really useful. So now we're getting to money. And we go, how much would you pay? Is this actionable? And it's not because it's opinion in the future. So what we really want to know is what is it worth? So ask about their life. This actually should be a discuss. So you basically encourage them to fix this one. This is a bit of a tough one. They won't always get it. But then you ask this one and then they get it. This one is actionable. So the cost is in their life, whereas what would you pay is really about your product. And then we make the point that conversation is a skill. And then we hear from some entrepreneurs. This is a short video about basically going to East Africa and doing things that you think help people but don't. And now we cover the whole listening thing. Signals, so you cover obstacles, goals. You need to learn to hear obstacles, goals, actions. Cover them all 3, repeat again, put it in context. Yep. That video is, so the main point is it's basically all of these videos are used to help them see what they're learning is a parallel journey to what most entrepreneurs go through. So in this case, Octo, the guy you see there, he's actually like, he's a rags to riches story, a rapper that came out of Kibera. So he's out of the slums, and now is doing quite well, and is investing in sort of philanthropy business projects in the slum where he's from. And he basically talks about that all these NGOs come in and entrepreneurs come in externally and they think they have the answers and they're just not dealing with anything that people in the slums care about. So he talks about they're like toilets, like people come here with toilet projects and nobody here cares to invest in toilet projects because they have bigger problems. And then Philip is actually a successful entrepreneur. He's just modest when he speaks. So he's actually explaining from as he's been learning. So Philip is actually born and raised in West Africa, but then went to school in the US, and he has a US accent. But he then came to East Africa and started his tech company, which is quite successful, Brick. And he's describing how they're developing this African made or designed for Africa routers and tablets, and going into these places and learning and getting a product really right for a certain area, and then going to another part of the same country and then realizing that everything they learned doesn't apply in this other part of the country. But both of them are really pointing out that you really have to sit there and talk to the people and understand what it is that they care about in their life before you have your first chance at doing something that will work. So even as successes, they still keep this attitude of like, I don't know the best answer yet. And does that make sense? Okay, yeah. And just a small point here, he talks about NGOs and CBOs. If somebody asks, a CBO means community-based organization, and it's basically a group of young people who have self-organized to solve some problem in the community. And so they have names. They're like mini NGOs, except they're not international. They're just local guys who get together and like build schools or do whatever. So he's saying that when the NGOs come, they they can't work without the CBOs. The CBOs are the ones who actually get shit done, and it's because they're local guys. So yeah, so now we're talking about listening. We go through all this. So you record exact word, then you organize by signals. That way we can spot patterns later. So you guys did this with cards, and we've like massively simplified this process to make it just basically we've pulled out all of the extra time it takes, and we've not, to be honest, it's like it's a not as good version of what you did, but it's a good enough version. So it's a lot simpler. It's a lot easier to facilitate. It still makes the main points, but it doesn't go into more advanced pattern matching. And that just because we've reduced it to 1 day. So basically what we do is we say, fill in a page with your signals you hear like this. So write the person's name, and then you just sort of divide the page in 3, and you just write these key phrases under each signal as they're, this is as you're taking notes in the interview. So here it's actually good to get them to just grab a page and to grab a page because we're about to practice. So each one should set up this page in front of them. And then you say, okay, now we're going to try it. So for best effect, if you've practiced a bit, like if you spent, like if between now and when you do it, you can spend at least a couple more hours doing this, you'll be good enough to just pick somebody out of the audience and say, hey, tell me about your travel, and let's grab 2 people from the audience. Okay, you guys come up and you guys point to the signals on the slide as you hear them, and everybody else practice writing down what you hear on your page, and I will do the interview. And you spend 2-3 minutes just asking people about their last trip. So there's a few tips here that'll make your life easier. So just start by asking about the last trip. How did it go? And why did you go? Are good questions along this line of questioning. But generally ask about the place, ask about how they booked. How did you book? How did you find your flight or ticket? Right, like all of these sort of questions. And then if, for whatever reason they went, ask about that. So, and if you're not comfortable, you can just hit the online demo here, and that's me and Boyana, and that's a longer video. You don't want to play the whole video. You want to cut it off after 3 or 4 minutes. It's only longer in case, for whatever reason, somebody wants to watch it afterwards, or you need to keep going for some reason in the demo. So, like for example, if people are really confused after the first demo, or you want to give it another try, you're like, hey, there's still more, so you can keep playing it. Have you seen this video? Okay, so then when you're done that, you just get people to hold up their sheets, because you basically want to see that people have written down in this way. If they haven't, then you just call them out. Like if somebody is writing too much, and you also are asking, like, how did you do? So like somebody didn't write enough. You're like, okay, so was that because you didn't hear or you couldn't write? Somebody might be writing down phrases that are too long, right? So you're like, oh, okay, so you have to get good at picking out the key phrases. Generally, and this is another one, if somebody is stuck, or somebody presents a challenge and you don't know the answer, just turn it back on the rest of the group and say, yeah, that's a really good question. What would you guys do? Or what do you guys think about that? And you just basically get the group to coach the other person for a couple of minutes. So that takes the pressure off you, and it allows you some thinking time as well, to kind of like, while the group is giving feedback, you're kind of thinking, oh, actually, I know the thing. I'll just wrap up with this point. Right? So it's another facilitation tip there. But the other big thing here is like you just at the end of this, everybody holds up their sheets so that you can see it, so that you're just sort of scanning the room and you're catching. Did I write in the facilitation guide? Did I write about lockstepping? Yeah. So these points here, like when you're doing these kind of check-ins, the idea here is that if you've lost one or two people and they're not with you at this point, if you proceed without them understanding up to here, they're just going to get even more lost. And then then they're just going to become more detached and more disruptive and more disengaged. So these check-in points, when you and throughout, like any questions, all of these things, you generally want to like ask in a way where you're sort of scanning the room and making eye contact and looking for anyone who looks confused or troubled or like they don't get it or just blank or tired, and literally just one-on-one them right there and go yeah, how did you do? Do you have any questions? Because you want to catch anybody who's falling back early, so that you keep everybody moving together. As soon as they're too far behind, then it's harder to manage the group. So now this is a sort of matter-of-fact point, right? So now we're actually going to do this with real people. And so over the next 90 minutes, we're going to map out our beliefs about the customers. We're going to talk to them to understand them, and we're going to come back and analyze the results. And we're going to do 2 cycles of this so that we get practice learning in cycles, because that's how entrepreneurs manage their time. And then so this is again a call out to the room to get them to reflect. What percentage of, if you were to write down this sheet without speaking to a customer, what percentage of it would be right? How many of these things would be the exact words that the customers used? Like, how well do you know them? And you just get people to, it's like, there's no right or wrong answer here. Just call out what percentage do you think you would have with your customer group and your idea. And you get people to call out. And basically any number that is not 100%, the question then becomes, well, if it's 70% or 30% or 50%, there's a big portion of that that's wrong. And we don't know which portion of that is wrong. So how do we know which parts are actually true? And then this is where the use cases come in. So they're already familiar with use cases, because this is how we defined our starting point. But again, we can have multiple starting points. So use case or description of a scenario where a customer uses your product, like this, which you're familiar with. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a brainstorm of a whole bunch of different use cases to find many potential starting points. And this is what it looks like, and this is how we're going to do it. So everybody get in groups, grab a pen and some sticky notes. 1 minute, so you set a 1 minute timer here. This is action, so the reminder that this slide is one where each time you say something, get them to do it. Then once they have their pens, okay, individually come up with 4 use case ideas in your vision, 1 per sticky note. And this is individually, you each come up with 1. So, or you each come up with 4. And you give them 2 minutes for that. And now you have 4 minutes to share your ideas and make that master list on 1 page. And so in this case, you're basically getting them to share their ideas with each other and then combine the duplicates. So, weird metaphor out of nowhere. When you drive at night, you don't need to see the whole way, just 100 meters in front of you. In the same way, we only pick one learning topic at a time. So one thing to learn from our customers. We learn as a team, we learn everything together, we learn quickly, and our discoveries direct the next learning topic. So you don't need to decide what to learn after and the time after and the time after. You don't need to make a laundry list of things that you're going to do in order, because after you learn the first thing, the next thing you want to learn is probably going to change. So pick just one. So this is what you learn. So you basically give the group some time here. So a learning goal. I need to set a timer. Usually I'll give them 2 minutes for this. And the reason it's only 2 minutes is because actually it's not a very big decision. Because it's only going to be the team going out for half an hour to learn this stuff. So worst case scenario, you spent half an hour learning about something that wasn't totally on track, but you still going to learn something useful. And the way you frame it is how do you X? So that's kind of the things. We want to know how a customer does something that they already do. And in this case, we're tying it back to this goal in their life. So whatever that goal in their life is already exists without this product. So whatever that goal in their life is, from that use case mapping, they pick one of the goals in their life, and then they just go ask, how do you do that? You with me so far, Joanna? Okay. Okay, so then you just give them some time to prepare some questions, just so that they have some mental prep for how they're going to do this. And then you say, okay, you're going to break into groups of 2 or 3. One person asks, the other writes. You aim for at least 3 interviews, and you have 25 minutes, and you make this point really strongly. If you have to be back in 25 minutes, I will start the next part in 25 minutes, and you're going to get another chance. So even if you're running late, just cut off wherever you are and come back and be with me in 25 minutes, and then you start the timer. And before they go out, actually, I'm just going to cut this slide. So then you come back and you just discuss how did it go, and you pretty much just want people to quickly share, like, only going to spend 2 or 3 minutes on this, what worked and what didn't. So you're getting them to coach each other and share like lessons learned. And you go, okay, now we're going to analyze it. It has these 3 steps, and we're going to do these all in 15 minutes. You walk through the steps, then we start with the first one, so understand there. So you lay it all the notes, so all of the pages so that everyone can see them. And then you read them silently and you point. You guys did this, right? You guys did this with cards. Do you remember doing this? Okay. Do you remember doing this? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the first step here is that, so they're going to come back with all of these sheets that are divided in 3, right? So what you want them to do is just put the sheets all down so you can see them all, and everybody, the whole team stands around them, and then just read them silently. And if anybody has any question, all they do is they point to whatever it is on that sheet that they don't get, and they're like, what happened there? Or what does that say? And then the person who wrote it or who was there can reply. And so this just allows them to elicit, the key is to get to a common understanding about all the conversations first, so that they can make decisions as a team rather than let their personal experience guide their decision, whether or not that's against the other people's who are out doing interviews as well. So hang on. Yeah, anyway. So this point is like, you need to learn to make good decisions quickly. There will always be too much information. There will always be not enough information. Right? This is always the problem with being an entrepreneur. You're always making decisions when both of these opposite scenarios are true at the same time. And this is why you just make a decision with the time that you have. So this is just a reminder in the middle of the thing where they're going to feel like, I want more time. Like, you don't get more time. What you have to do is practice making a decision with this time. So now we move on to spotting patterns as a team. So in this case, again, it's a lot simpler than before. all we do is we tell them you're going to cross off the use cases that you think are no longer relevant, and you're going to add any new use cases that you learned from talking to people. And so your use case map should start to look something like this, where you're going through and you're adjusting some, you're removing some, and you're even adding new ones in that you've discovered. And then you give them 7 minutes to do that, and you just give them some rules. If you add or remove a use case, you have to explain why, and everybody can cross off or add, and you can even re-add one if you want. So if somebody crossed it off and you still think, no, I think I want to put it back, you can rewrite it on. So now you pick your next learning goal. And again, you're just picking one of the goals, the customer's goals that you want to learn about here. Give them 2 minutes to pick the next one. And before they go out, you just remind them, this is a rhetorical question that you ask them. When a customer and a business owner describe the same business differently, who is right? And then think about the Salim story. How did he describe his business, and how did his customers describe the business? Who was right? And again, there's no, a lot of people just go customer, right? And it's just there to like get them to think. So then you go, move on to the next slide. Our job here, and this is a reminder around, so you can read this slide, but the main point is it's a reminder that we're learning in order to build the right product. So whatever they say their problem is, that's their problem. We should build a product that answers their problem the way they see it. And now we kick them out again, and we just say, this time you have to get actionable quickly. You have to end bad conversations quickly. So you have 6 interviews per group, and you have 20 minutes. So you have to go be much faster this time. Go. And then when they get back from this time, in this case, you just leave this slide running and you set a 13-minute timer. And you basically say, you guys know the process of how to do the analysis. Here's the steps, just to remind you. Self-manage, go. And you just start to let them build up their own self-directing capability here. And then when they're done, then you go, well, so we're going to stop here, but how many should you keep doing? And then you give them these rules of thumb, right? So you keep going until you stop learning. So it's only once you've got new, if you're going out and you're just talking to people and you know what they're going to say already, you've heard this before, then you're good on that topic. And this is usually with 5 to 10 conversations. If it's more, then that goal that you've described, that topic that you're learning about, is probably very broad, and you'd probably want to split it into subtopics and then go out and learn about those individually. Wrap up slide. All right, so pointing out that we've been doing all this, like just reminding them, we've been doing all of this understanding stuff so that we can now design around their needs. Take a break. Actually, do you have any questions here? Okay. Oh, sorry, I lost you. Yeah, can you start again? So if they're not their target customers, they're going to probably point this out. And usually they point this out sooner, like in the vision sort of statement area, or they'll point it out like right as we're about to go out. And at that point, you want to basically tell them, like, your vision is your vision, and that should stay constant. If there are people within that vision that are out on the street, then focus on them for today. And if they're not out on the street, then take a few minutes before you go out to just adjust your vision, just for the purpose of today's exercise. But generally, like if somebody will notice when they're like, hey, wait, we're about to go out and talk to a bunch of customers. These guys aren't, they're not in my target. And you go, okay, well, again, if it's a question of your starting point, then pick some starting points where there are people on the streets, because you can change your starting point. And if it's vision, then sorry, we'll have to pick a different vision. This hasn't really. So usually this will happen before you get to the interview. So usually it's going to happen. All right. So at this point, you're like, now we're going to hit the real world and learn from real customers. And so usually when you get to this section here, you're going, wait, hang on, these aren't the guys. Or in this case, like you're also walking around as they're doing their brainstorms, right? So even when they're writing on sticky notes, you're walking around reading what they're writing. Then when they're combining, you're walking around looking at what's going on there, and you can sort of interject there and go and say, hey, no, actually, these people aren't the people you're going to meet on the street, right? And you go, well, no. And it's like, okay, so start to think about which specific customer groups are on the street that will be more interesting to you, or that will still be interesting to you. If you want, we can put this in as the slide at the beginning. The reason I haven't, and I'd say run it without it, because it's very rare that this comes up. Usually the idea space that people are using is quite narrow. Especially like with student groups, they tend to, almost all the ideas tend to be focused on students somehow. But if you're really worried about it, when you get to this section here, pick a group of people that includes people that you can meet outside here today. If you do that here, you're kind of giving away that they're going to go out and do that. So you're missing this chance to sort of drop this quiet bomb on them that, hey, now we're going to go outside, which is quite a fun thing to do, and sort of amps up the excitement level of the workshop. So here you're kind of, giving away the ending slightly, but feel free to. It's not a huge problem. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, there's one case where they came back from the interviews and they're like, we couldn't find anybody relevant. And then you go, great, you have now learned that as entrepreneurs, given the skills and the network that you have for today, you cannot find your customer group. Guess what? That's still good learning. So for the next round, you're going to want to do a bunch of use cases where those people are on the streets. Right? And then you just sort of make that part of the learning cycle. That's totally fair. It's more common than you'd think with even more experienced entrepreneurs, like guys in accelerators. This happens all the time. Like, hey, we have this brilliant idea to build something for the racehorse industry, and you're like, oh, that's really interesting. How are you connected to the racehorse industry? And like, we're not. You're like, okay, it's probably not a good business for you to be building then. It's like, oh, we'll go find them. It's like, okay, maybe, but why don't you pick an idea where you have access to your customer? That might be a good idea. Anyway. Okay, so we were here. Okay, so now at this stage, this is usually like the after lunch stage, and so they're coming back. They're a bit groggy. We've been pushing them hard all morning, and so this is kind of this like interlude to sort of very quietly and sort of have a considered, calm conversation with them, right? Where you're like, let's be introspective here, and like, I know you guys are tired. And I've actually got a point to make on this. And it's basically that these days are going to happen. Certainly, there are lots of entrepreneurs that talk about being able to not work very hard and work smart, and that is true, but that is a subset of experienced entrepreneurs. And usually to get to that point, you're going to have to go through some hard times like this. And even if you're tired now, you've only been at it for 4 hours, right? So this is still, when they talk about a 4-hour work week, often it's this level of intensity. But the important thing here is being the right kind of entrepreneur for you is important to get right, because that's what's going to keep you motivated. That's what's going to keep you moving. And so you talk through some different types of entrepreneurs. So I'm just going to tell you about 4 different types, and there's more than this, but this should start to give you an idea of what kind of entrepreneur do I want to be. Digital nomad, scalable startup, a craftsman or consultant, or build, operate, transfer. And then so basically you can just read these off, right? So nomads are the guys who try and minimize the amount of time their business takes, and they make businesses that are not very demanding of them, but make some small amount of regular money. And this allows them to do things like just perpetually travel. So you actually have a Southeast Asian community that's emerged of just sort of 20-something backpacker entrepreneurs who do things like information products and forums and things that don't require them to be online every day. And then the scalable startup is where the whole startup hype comes from. And that's, you know, we keep hearing about these billion dollar plus companies. But really you're rolling the dice here, because even if you're really good, your consolation prize is you get hired by your competitor or you get bought by your competitor, and then you end up working for them for a while. And yeah, you might make a few million, but you're not making billions. But but this gets you in the game of like, hey, you know, I want to be a billionaire. I want to make $1 billion company. And usually this involves investors too. So as soon as you start to take investment, you then need to worry about where your next investment comes from. And you're committing yourself to this future of growth. So even once you take usually your investment, you've pretty much committed your company to 4 investment rounds later. In 4 or 5 years, that will be a $20 million investment round at a $100 million plus valuation. You have to get your company to that level of growth. Right? So that's the story here. And if you don't, then you fail and the company dies. So that's the gamble that you take. And it's just, and in terms of lifestyle, that's somebody who wants to work long hours for 10 years. Right? Like there's no way around that really. And then the craftsman and consultant, these are people who build, like if you want to be a really good designer, if you really love design and you want different projects, then you can build a service business. And you know, IDEO is a good example of this, but there's lots of consultancies out there where you build a service business and you can get comfortably wealthy off of a business like this. But the important thing is you're doing this because you love doing that type of work. Whereas the other types of businesses, you have to be a generalist. You have to do a bunch of different types of work that might not interest you. And then the build, operate, transfer. The classic story here is, so like a friend of mine here, actually, have you heard of MammothDB or Zentio, or a guy called Steve Kyle in Sofia? Okay. So he's in this category generally, or at least so far. He's done one scalable startup, but his other businesses have been this category. And the good example is the one he just did with Uber. So Uber is a fast-growing company. They need to hire smart developers. He has a company, so he starts building a company where he starts employing developers to do contract software work for different companies, but mainly for Uber. So Uber is paying Steve to deliver this software development, to develop the Uber product on contract. But what Steve has also done is he said, in 2 years' time, you are going to have the option to buy my company, and you're going to buy my company for X tens of thousands of euros per developer that you choose to keep. And in 2 years' time, so they keep giving Steve these contracts to build Uber product. You know, he's learning how Uber works. He's doing a good job. They're happy with it. He's making money off the service. He's making a profit off that development. And then in 2 years, they go out of the team of 30 developers. They say, actually, there's 18 that we really like. We are going to buy your company and we're going to keep those 18 developers. And then they write Steve a check for that fixed price per developer times 18. And that's a build, operate, transfer. And that's a fairly typical thing in Eastern Europe, for example. So this, again, like you can talk through, when I talk these through, it's like I just bring them back to the lifestyle implication. So this is hard work for a couple of years, and you need a good network to start, because you both need to know companies like Uber who are willing to do this, and they have to trust that you're able to, and you have to have a network of whoever you're employing, these smart people, whether it's developers or whatever it might be. But if you can do that, then you can pretty much say, I'm going to work hard on this business for 2 years, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to make money off this because I already know who I'm going to sell the company to. And I pretty much know for how much. And it's not going to be multi-millions, but it goes into the millions. So, it's hundreds of thousands to millions. So it's kind of like, I'll work hard for a few years and maybe I'll make €1 million off of that, and I'll have €1 million in a couple of years. And then I can do what I want with my life with €1 million in my bank. So these all have different things. So again, so I talk these through, and then it's just, and I've taken longer than I would normally here. These slides are designed just to be read. But the important thing is you choose a type that's good for your goals. So how rich do you want to be? And that's an important question. Do you want to be super rich, or like is 100K enough for you to be good? Like what's good for you? And then, do you want to work on the same thing or different projects? And do you want to change the world, or do you want to retire early? And depending on your answer to these, you would choose a different type of entrepreneurship. And that's what's going to keep you motivated. Even when you're tired, you'll be tired and happy. So that's meant to be like kind of a motivational speech. It's like inside information to understand this world. But then getting them to reflect on, why am I being an entrepreneur? And so then you can move on to now the third section, which is figuring out a good product. So we did the Build a Better TV. Do you remember this one? Right, so you get them, so you just get them to throw out a whole bunch of ideas. You write them on sticky notes, and you make this wall full of cool, crazy, awesome TV ideas, which is like the super awesomest TV ever that you can think of. And then you say, okay, but now what we're going to do is in teams, you're going to design a TV, and you're going to have to draw it, except for you're going to have a specific customer group, and each group only gets one feature. Now on this slide, again, if you hit P, you will see here, there's a whole bunch of ideas for customer groups. So then you just go through and you go, you guys get army soldiers, you guys get in the boardroom, you guys get African farmers, right? Just pick the ones you want. You guys get desert nomads, you guys get like American mothers, you guys, it's for scientists. And then you start the timer for 5 minutes. You have to design one feature for that group, go. And then you let them present. And then the question is here, basically, how many came up with a new feature idea that wasn't on the original list? And so that's kind of a nice pointer to say, like whatever the result, you just go, oh, that's interesting, or whatever, you just sort of roll with it. But generally, they're going to come up with new ideas. And when they do, you just point out that this is why having a specific customer group is useful, because your advantage is speed, right? So basically, the more features you have, the slower it is for you to get to market, and the slower it is for you to adjust, the slower it is for you to change, and the more expensive it is to maintain all this stuff. So your main advantage, given that a big company has all of the resources, right? They have all of the I'm thinking of just putting this as quick points in the slide, but big companies have all of the smart people, they have all of the money, they have all of the connections. And so the only advantage you have is speed, and every feature you add reduces your speed. So being specific about your customer group allows you to have just one feature, which keeps your feature set low and keeps your speed high. And now we have a more informed sense of our market from the previous section. So now we're in a good position to our starting point. Then we introduce this concept of product market fit. It's about matching the right customer and the right product. And just a reminder that you're trying a whole bunch of different ideas for product market fit until you have one that pulls you towards your vision. And a reminder that you're aligning whatever your product is, you're aligning to how they see their needs. So this is building on that previous question of if a customer and business owner describe it, who's right. Now you're going, so here's where it's really important to align with how they see their needs. And so then everyone grabs a customer profile sheet, and they come up with 3 customer profiles. So you pick one obstacle, one goal, and the action they take from all of those sheets that they had from before, and they fill out the customer profiles. And they do 3 different customers in 5 minutes. And then you give them another 5 minutes and you say, now you have to come up with a product that matches exactly 3 products, one that matches, one for each of those customer groups. And you draw 1 per sheet. Then you ask if anybody came up with any new ideas, how different were they from each other, and how minimized were they on the specific customer group. Right, and so now by here they should have sort of reached this point where they've started to piece out through these presentations in your commentary. Oh no, there's no presentations here. Yeah, sorry. But through this point, the idea is that they will have gotten to this stage where they started to feel what it's like to do these small starting point ideas around their big vision and the big customer space that they're in. And now this next video, the idea here is it's setting up stories of entrepreneurs who are now at this stage, and then go, okay, now I'm going to my customer and I'm bringing to them the idea of my first product or an early version of my first product. And how did that story unfold? And so presenting them, and then the big thing to take away here is Edward, who's the first guy in the video. Towards the end, he points out, he says, it takes a lot to trust a startup, but they didn't have any other options. Right? So again, like these quotes just like re-emphasize that point. Did you hear him say that? That's a sign of customer pull. That's product market fit, right? That's something that they needed so much. They didn't have any other options, that they were willing to work with this small company, even though it was a big risk. That's because they got the good starting point. They figured out something that really mattered to that customer. And then, yeah, so you conclude with the fact that a good starting point is one where they're pulling the product from you. Okay, then break, then we go into experiments. So this is the setup slides. Sorry? It's not in this. It's not. So feel free to, right? Like if you feel that when you get here, like you're like, oh wait, hang on, before I go into this like wrap up video, if you feel like you should be walking around the room, especially with a small group. You're like looking over their shoulder, you're having quick conversations with them, you're checking in with them as they're doing it, right? And especially these ones, like where, the exercise is to do 3 things in 5 minutes. So sometimes they get lost and they stop managing their time. So you've really got to be there and going, hey, you have a minute, you've used 1.5 minutes, so you should be done your first profile by now. right? And then if you see one team hasn't, you go in and you facilitate, right? You go in and figure out what's going wrong there and help them and coach them along. So by the time you get to this product exercise, you might want to give it, you'll know if they're done it or not. You might want to give it more time. So here we might want to do like a sheets up. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll put a sheets up, hold your sheets up slide. And maybe we'll just do it as a discussion. That's probably the easiest thing. So then there's a reminder slide for you to do that. And no, sorry, there is a discussion here. Right, so this is where that comes up, where they right, so this is where you say any new ideas and yeah, so it's not like everybody presenting all 3 ideas because that would take too long. It's just like, and you get a few volunteers for them to say like what they came up with and what was new. And then the teams that didn't come up with anything new, that were sort of narrow, they kind of just learn by seeing the other guys having figured it out. But again, if you see people are stuck here as a facilitator, feel free to like say, hey, what about you guys? Did you guys have new ideas? And they go, well, no, we had the same idea from the beginning the whole time. And they're like, okay, well, what was that idea? Oh, interesting. Okay, what were your customer groups? Right? And then they say the 3 different customer groups, and you're like, okay, guys, what do you think? Do you think that they could try different products for those 3 customer groups? What ideas do you got? And again, that same trick, you just open it up to the room, and then with the room, you sort of coach them along and help them see. And then this is the lockstep thing where you're catching them up. Is that cool? Okay. Okay, so experiments. So again, you're recapping. Now we're on this type of learning. Experiments, they kind of break down into some simple questions in a business. Will they find it, buy it, use it? Will it work for them? Will they recommend it? These are generally, like when you talk about business experiments, generally this is what we're answering one of these questions. But architects, they only get one try. So how do they do that? Typo here. I'll fix that. And the answer is that they prototype. So some people will know the answer. Some people will come up with different ones, whatever. You just move on, prototypes. But particular entrepreneurs prototype as well. But our prototypes they isolate the part they want to test. So this is an example. And this guy is a real engineer. Like this, it looks like kind of a funny picture. But this guy's won serious awards for his work. I forget his name, but when you're looking at different ideas for plows, you don't need to rebuild the plow each time. In this case, like he attached it to a motorbike because the motorbike is the fixed thing. He doesn't need to know, does he need an engine? He just wants to change the back of the plow and try different versions of that. So he's isolating the plow, and the rest of the tractor is staying fixed. And so we want to do the same with the parts of the business, right? When we're answering, will they find it? We're not answering, will they buy it? When we're answering, will they use it? We're also not answering, will they find it or will they buy it? When we're answering, will they recommend it? We're not asking if it works for them. So you always want to isolate that one thing and plug it into a known working part for the rest. And we do it, and again, fast information. Good decisions fast, so you design your experiments for fast information. It's more important than accuracy. Now, the other thing with these experiments is we take risks we can afford to lose. So again, you just read this. The main point here is you're basically paying for information here. So make that information as affordable as possible. Make it so that you learn quickly, and once you've learned that, then you still have time and money left to keep going with your business. Right, so yeah, so that's the point here. And then, So you've just hit them with a whole bunch of like very high level theoretical stuff. So now you bring it down. Let's make it practical. I'm going to give you a simple 3-point checklist. Does it isolate the single question without getting complicated? Does it answer that question as quickly as possible? And does it have a clear measurement? So that is your experiment checklist. Now let's apply it. Let's say we have this idea. So in this case, so this setup is basically a whole bunch of ideas, business ideas, where you want them to think through what should the experiment be. So, and a fun way to do this is to say, like, pretend it's your friend who comes to you with this like business idea. And you're like, okay, let me help you come up with an experiment. So my friend says, I want to build an online store to sell marble sculptures, right? So what would you do? What would your experiment be? You just get, so again, often these are ones where they're going to be a bit tired, they're going to be quiet, and you're going to have to sort of stand there at the front of the room silently, making eye contact with people for a while. The thing here again is that whatever idea they come up with, you're like, that's great. And you go through the checklist with them. So you're like, does it isolate the question? Does it do it quickly as possible? Does it have a clear measurement? And in this one, generally, so you need to know the answers to this. And in this one, the answer is that you look it up on Google keyword search, because then you can just see how many people within a couple of minutes, you can see how many people globally are searching for that thing, for marble sculptures. And in this case, 18,000 in the world, and marble sculptures for sale is only 480. So not enough people to make a business. It's not a great business. And so if you know that that's the answer, every time they're coming up with an idea, you just know, like, can you make it quicker? Because they'll usually come up with things like, you could put it on, you could make a Shopify store. You're like, great, how long would that take? You go, oh, that might take a day or two. And you're like, that's pretty good actually, but can you make it quicker? Can you get that information quicker? And you sort of keep pushing them that way, right? What's a faster experiment, right? And you get them and like, wow, this one, and so then a reminder, the faster you learn, the better, right? So let's run the checklist. Does it focus on the question? Yes. Will they find it on Google? Minimum amount of time takes 5 to 10 minutes. Clear measurement, number of people searching every month. Boom. So then you're walking them through the checklist. And then you point out that you don't need to just always do like some kind of system like Google where they have that data ready. You might want to test the ad on a platform. So for example, if you're going to do a Facebook ad, you could run a Facebook ad for a day, and you don't even need the ad to go anywhere. It could just go to a 404 error or a blank Facebook page. The point is you're checking to see, do people click on the ad? Will they find it on Facebook? You can even do this with like a poster, right? So you could say, I believe that they'll find it through a poster in their neighborhood. And you're like, okay, go make a bunch of posters and stick them on, and in a few hours or in a day or two, you're going to know people are calling you. So now we get them to do that. So we say, you need to design a 24-hour experiment. So you take the second product idea from those 3 products they came up with before. You say, take the second one and build an experiment that will, in 24 hours, tell you, will your customer find it in a specific marketing channel? Whatever that is, you decide on that channel. And so the tip is, like, you've talked to these customers, you know where they go, where they look now, you know what they do to investigate the problem. So where are they already looking? And pick one of those things and design a 24-hour experiment so you know if they can find you there. And again, you make them draw that experiment. And then you give them a minute to present, and then a minute for feedback. And the feedback is just basically facilitate the group to go through the checklist. So then once they're done, you're like, great presentation. Let's start the feedback timer. You restart the timer, and then you go, okay, does it isolate the awareness channel? And you get the audience to give feedback. Does it answer the question as quickly as possible? Does it have a clear measurement? All right, and you're just again facilitating the group within a minute to give that feedback, and then okay. Now, anyone else want to share their experiment idea? And you do a handful of these. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay, does anyone want to share their, okay, sorry. Now, so the next thing you go is like, okay, here's another crazy idea. And let's think of an experiment, but this time we're going to test, will they buy it? Right? And so this is somebody with a crazy toppings pizza idea. Right, so again, you're just getting them to throw out ideas and you're encouraging them and you're going, okay, can we do it faster? Can we isolate it more? Usually this one they have trouble isolating because they usually confuse this now. They're already thinking about finding. So quite often they'll come up with an idea that's like that tests also whether or not the customer will find it. An example here would be exactly, yeah, you got it. So yeah, like if they say a website for pizza, you know, and then it's like, yeah, but then you have to get them to find that website, right? And they're like, oh yeah, okay. And the other one is like, oh, well, let's go to an existing restaurant and let's convince them to try these pizza toppings. And you're like, okay, that's a cool idea. How long do you think that would take to get that deal and get the pizza toppings and get them ready to go? And like, oh, a couple months. It's like, okay, can we do it faster than a couple months? You know, but you encourage it. You're like, you're on the right track. So even if they're like pizza website, you're like, yeah, I like where you're thinking because you're like acting by yourself and you're doing it, but we're including will they find it there, right? Because you have to make them find it. So can we isolate that? You see, so you just encourage and then bring the checklist into it and just push them a little further. And in this case, the answer is a market stall. So a market stall for especially for a lunch market, right? So when people are already going for lunch, you know they're going to find food there. That's why they're there. And the particular thing here is that I point out that sandwich, that board that's in the front of this picture that says juice box. There was a pizza restaurant in London that did exactly this. And they started in the lunchtime markets because it only took a few weeks, and they would go with normal pizza and every day they would have a new different type of crazy pizza. And they would advertise that crazy pizza on the board. And then they would, so you can go through, right? And this only took them a few weeks, and it measured the number of people who chose the new pizza toppings versus standard toppings, right? And this is how they actually developed their menu this way. So even once they had established this and it was working, and then they started actual pizza restaurants, the market stall still allowed them to test new toppings, and the ones that were successful they bring into the restaurant. Anyway, that's a side version of the story. You don't need to cover that. And then other things, you can simplify the product, right? So again, an information product is a useful way to, like, if they're going to buy your app, can you try to make an information product faster and then sell that? Can you deliver it as a service for the same price as your product? So for example, if you're, even if your idea is Uber, do you need to make the app, or can you make it just so that there's a phone number that people call and they just say, okay, where are you? Or can you make it, you know, there's what's another good one? The classic story is one where these guys wanted to build a whole meal planning service built in an app, and that app would cost you $10 a month, but it would basically give you all sorts of great meal ideas for your family and give you the entire shopping list and save you all of that trouble. And what they did is they went to a grocery store and they just stood outside talking to mothers, shopping for their families who they were seeing coming out of the store, and they said, I just want to test this idea. If you're interested, pay me $10 and I will be your meal planner for the month. And so they were doing a lot of work for $10 in a month, but they were learning about the service, and they were testing, will people buy? And then this is a common thing in enterprise sales, that if you're selling to a big organization, especially if it's a software project, they will prepay you. They will investigate whether or not you're capable, and you have to prove that you're trustworthy, but they will still pay you before the product is built. Usually they pay you like 50% up front, and then some monthly fee as you're working on it and you hit milestones. But the big point is that prepayment is a huge, huge thing here. And then the last one you push on is, will it work for them? So this is the whole idea here is this website called Hipmonks, very popular in the US. So they had this idea, and what they did is they presented real screens that they had drawn out to business people who they knew were booking flights. So the sort of generalized version of this story is, go to the cafeteria of an office building where you know that people would use your product, and come with screens drawn out. And in Hipmonk's case, they used real data. So they would basically say, hey, we've got this idea. I'd love to show you screens. What flight are you going to book soon? And they'd say this flight. And they go, okay, I'm going to have you the screens. I'm going to get them to you in like 10 minutes. And they would literally fill it out on paper and then go and present them with a piece of paper and say, here's what the app looks like. Interact with it. And they would get them to like pretend to click on the piece of paper and whatever, and go like, okay, I'll click here. Right? And why did you click there? And they do this usability test. But then quickly learned, I don't have a checklist screen here, but it isolates just the part of will it work for them? Because what they were looking to see is, do people understand? I'm going to put the checklist screen back. Do people understand, and do they, having seen this data, then say, that's the flight I want, I'll go buy it. And another point, which is on the slide that I removed by accident, but is they even discovered the word that these business travelers used, which is agony. So, and you can see here that under sort by, it says agony. So this was a big part of what they learned, is that agony is somehow a function of overnight stays and long stopovers. And so, right, or very short stopovers where you're running. So, anyway, they learned all of this through a few days of usability testing, just by isolating the screens. Now that last one is like a hard one. So chances are people aren't going to get it, and you just kind of go, okay, no worries, because they're also getting tired. So you just go, like, so when you're at the screen and they're like, I don't know, and you're like, okay, let me show you, right? And so this is more meant to go like, there's an advanced version of this waiting for you, and it's to show them the hard one, because what's about to come next, the last exercise that we give them, it's meant to feel easier than this. So it's okay if they don't get it. You just kind of explain it to them, and sort of, be amazed that this is possible, and convey that excitement. Any question? Okay. What are you unsure of? Yeah. So if you, not to get their opinion, it was to get their reaction. So So imagine it this way. You have this idea, and like flight booking websites are common. So you don't really need to redesign any part of a flight booking website. You know that generally when they work, people, they work because, people know to go to them. There's a big, so it's like all of that stuff we don't care about. We can get that right. The main part that makes this unique is that, right, it's like this special timeline to see how tired each flight will make you. So you just isolate that part, that special timeline. And what they did is so if you can imagine this is your idea, you go, you go to the local, maybe not office park, but maybe, call it the office park, where, like there's a whole bunch of businesses where there's lots of travelers. Right, or you isolate, or you call up a bunch of business travelers, and you just say, I'd love to take 15 minute meeting with you to show you my app idea. There's lots of ways to do this, but if you can just imagine like hitting the cafeteria of this building, and just asking people, hey, are you booking a flight? I've got this app idea, I'd love to show you. I'll buy you your lunch. And then saying, okay, what flight are you booking soon? Actually, let me explain this narrative a bit clearer. So you go to this cafeteria of, say, a place where there's a lot of traveling salespeople, whatever business is local, and then you camp out in front of the cafeteria with a sign that just says, I've got an app idea to help you book better flights, or book you flights that make you less tired. I would love to show it to you, and I'll buy you lunch. Right. So then you get people coming in, and salespeople come in. They go, oh, yeah, buy me lunch, great. And then you go, okay, I'll buy you lunch. What flight are you booking soon? And they say this flight. Like, okay, you qualify, I'll buy you lunch. And then the teammate is now running the database query of that flight and going, okay, I have, and drawing out the screens. And so then you buy the lunch, you sit down with them at the table, and you're like, okay, here is the screen of the app. And they go, oh, okay, interesting. And you start to see them reading what the flights are. You see them pointing, like, as they're like, oh, that's interesting, that thought. You see where they're looking, and you're like, hey, why are you looking there? What you're trying to do is understand their reaction to that. And you're like, okay, this is it's a technique called paper prototyping for app design, where you say, let's pretend that this is actually the screen on your computer, except for I will be your computer. So anything you want to do, if you want to click, just touch. If you want to type something, point where you're going to type it, and then tell me what you're typing. And literally, if they say, I'm typing this, you go, okay, great. And you draw it on the page. You write it. Like, I'm typing this in the search box. And you go through these steps with them, and then show them the next screen. Like, when you click here, what happens? Oh, then it's this screen, and you have all these screens prepared. Now, with real data, what happens is that you really see their true reaction. And what they were looking for was for people to go, this is really cool, I want this, which is an opinion. But then going, actually, is that flight real? Because I want to book that flight. Right now, at that point, you know that it worked for them because they're taking a serious action. They're like, they've now made their decision of that flight based on this piece of paper you showed them. Right, so that's a paper prototype in a case where it worked so well that you're getting these successes coming out of it from the customer's point of view. Does that make more sense? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So now the last point we get to, and this is really wraps up the whole thing. So when you wait too long to launch, you only learn a little bit, and by then it's too late. So you see in this graph, this story is like, by the end of this graph, the company died because they didn't have enough useful information, and they never really made good decisions. They only ever released one product, right? And that was towards the end, and by then it was too late. They never succeeded. And what successful businesses look like and experienced entrepreneurs tend to do is launch fast and improve in cycles. And so this is where you realize when you start, you don't have very much useful information because you haven't put something real in front of the customer yet. You haven't given it a proper try. So the sooner you do that, the better, because as soon as you do that, it's not that you're expecting your first idea to work necessarily, but in trying it and minimizing it so you can do it quickly, you're now learning a lot more and you have more useful information. And now with that useful information, you go, okay, what's our next try going to look like? And then you do another try, and then you get more useful information. You can see how this ladders up, the stairs up towards the end of the same time period. You actually have all the useful information and you know what to do with your business, and you're making far more informed, far better decisions only because you force yourself to put things in front of customers quickly. Right? So that's the launch fast and improve in cycles. And this is why technology companies are leading the way in innovation, because of this attitude. It's not because of the technology itself, it's because the technology allows for this type of thinking to emerge, and this approach. So that's theoretical. Let's bring it back to a practical example. I want to start an airline. All right. So this is the last one of these. So I want to start an airline as fast as possible. Oh, and I have no money. What would you do? And again, same thing. You're just getting people to come up with ideas, and you're like, let me tell you two different stories. This has happened twice there have been two big successes here. So one is the story of Virgin, and Virgin Airlines started because Richard Branson was stuck on an island on a canceled flight, and he knew that you could charter a plane, but it was expensive, and there was like hundreds of people who were lining up to change their flights to get it moved, and they were all stranded for the next couple of days at least, and nobody was happy about it. And so he got on the phone and he started calling airline charter companies in the UK and basically saying, how much would it cost to charter a plane to be here like later this evening? And he got a price, and he divided it by the number of people that were there, obviously giving himself some wiggle room and some profit. And then he went, okay, I need to sell a ticket I need to sell 50 tickets at £250. And he just started going up the line and going, I can charter a plane if I get 50 people to buy a ticket for £250. Do you want to be one of them? And that was it. He just worked the same line of people who were lining up to get their flights changed, who were all stranded. And there were enough people who were willing just to pay money to have their flight, to get a flight for him. And then once he had enough cash from them, he just called up the charter and he's like, okay, I'm good to go. Bring the plane. And that's the beginning of Virgin Airlines. And he was, I guess an important part of that story is he was sitting there thinking like, I'm stranded and all of these people are stranded and this airline isn't going to do the right thing and just bring another plane. This isn't right. I can do a better job. I can run a better business. And then he started to think, well, okay, how do I minimize that and do that now? And he got the money up front. And then the other story is more recent, called Surf Air. So in California, there's a lot of people who fly up and down the coast as commuters every week. So they're usually rich people who live in a nice part of California, like the wine district, and they're going to either Hollywood or San Francisco to work. And they really don't like commercial airports. It's a really bad part of their life because they see these commercial airports a couple times a week at least. It's a big waste of time for them. So what these guys realized they could do is run small airplanes up and down the coast, more like a bus company, and charge a subscription. And basically say, like, if you pay $3,000 a month, you can just fly on one of our planes whenever the next one is free. The next seat is free. And for these rich people, $3,000 a month wasn't that much money compared to what they're already paying for commercial flights. It's a bit more, but in the grand scheme of things for them, it's not a huge amount of money. So they put out a website that said, this is what we're going to do. The first the first 200 people who sign up for 3,000 and prepay, you get your subscriptions, and everyone else will have to wait. And this just started to spread. So they basically just started to get the word out among those communities, and they had over 1,000 people sign up within the first few months. And sign up meant that they paid their 3,000 upfront. So now they had $3 million US with which they could buy or start leasing planes. So again, strong need, very strong starting point that they figured out, and they just put it out in this way. It's like, will people prepay? Will people find this? Will people spread the word, and will people prepay? And within a few months, they have $3 million in their bank account. They're like, okay, I guess we're starting to lease airplanes now and go. So having heard those two stories, you can launch an airline with no money. You can launch your business with no money. So now as a team, this is the last exercise you give them, but this is the real one that really counts. You have to launch your business and you have to make money in 48 hours. How can you design an experiment that does that? And you give them 5 minutes. And then this is wrap up, and then a final opportunity to lessons learned from today. Anybody want to share what they learned, anything that stands out? This point is just to say, just to reinforce, there is nothing more you need to do. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have what it takes. Everything else you will pick up on the way. So if you want to do it, if you really want to do it, start now. Right. So if you want to start. And you can minimize your idea to 10 hours a week. Just keep it simple, and you can do it as a part-time thing. So the people who really want to do that will. And the whole idea here is you're taking away the whole idea of a big risk, right? It's like you don't have to quit your job. You don't have to get the perfect idea. You really just have to go with your 10 hours a week. And so this is where you just give them 5 minutes to do the feedback forms, send them online, and then I can go over these feedback forms with you and expose them all to you. You can look at them together. And then the last slide is the call to action. So if you want to start your idea, start it, and I can get you a mentor. And in this case, you're just going to introduce them to me. Me and Nemo are going to be the mentors if anybody wants. So you can say, I know experienced entrepreneurs who are willing to help you, and they will mentor you if you want to start today. Or if you want to work with a startup, then you can tell them about Global Entrepreneur. So basically, just to say, it's up to you now. I have these 2 resources available for you. You're free to go now. Thank you. And if these are interesting, if you want to continue, come talk to me, and then you see who follows up. And that's it. That's the whole show. So, yeah, any questions now? Anything? All right. Yeah, so this, basically trust the slides, and if there's something that just doesn't work, just keep going. It's fine. There's a lot of redundancy in this, and it's better just to opt with just go faster. All right. So if you're unsure, especially if it's gonna be your first time doing it, just keep in mind that you're gonna do this through iterations as well, right? So and the whole thing is designed to be forgiving. It's designed to it's designed for you to run it for the first time. There's a lot of overlap between the concepts, and there's a lot of repetition. So there's a lot of the same concepts are being repeated in different ways throughout. So it gives you a lot of breathing room. So you just trust the slides. Just if you made the point that's on the screen, right? You don't need to remember anything else. Just hit next. Yeah. So and Yeah. No. So yeah. So the team sizes always stand no matter how big your entire class is. So the team sizes are 3 to 5. Right. So basically no matter what size of group here, unless if you have like 3 people in the room and they can't, well, if you have 3 people in the room, then you've got to basically get them to pick one person's vision, and we'll work on that one today. Right. And if it's 2 people, then then the team has to be 2 people. Right. But also don't allow teams of 6 or more. It's very important. And actually, this shouldn't even be 5. Actually, I realized this. I've changed this, and sorry, it should be 3 to 4. So 5 plus is a bad team size. Because what happens when you get 5 is that you get a lot of groupthink, and you get a lot of like people standing around and not knowing, and you get a lot of sort of somebody emerges as like the default leader because they're the loudest person, and that creates a negative experience. Yeah, then it's 3 and 2, exactly. Right, and so yeah, right. And if you have 6, then it'll end up being 3 and 3. If you have 7, then it'll be 2, 2 and 3. But generally, they have 20 minutes, so they figure that out. Because what ends up happening is like halfway through, and again, whenever there's a timer running, you want to kind of be active and reminding people of the time and sort of coaching them. So, if it's 5 minutes left on that timer, and you're like, hey, if you're not in a team yet, you have 5 minutes left. So, you might sort of find the people who are a bit stuck and go coach them or point them to another team, or if a team is like clearly a big team, like 5 or 6, and you're like, guys, you can't all be on this team. So, but it's okay for you to have 2 teams that have the same vision, right? So you can break it up that way. You can say you can both have the same vision if you really want to. But chances are, if you split, you'll probably have a slightly different vision anyways, and that's cool, right? But yeah. And honestly, for you, it's like the fewer groups, the easier it is for you to facilitate, especially early, because then you really get to stand there and see what they're doing, and again, understand what happens in these group dynamics when when you're setting them up for these exercises. So yeah, that's. I'm going to write up. If I don't write this up in the facilitator guide before, if a team is stuck on a decision and you just want to so one of the big messages here that sort of underlies all this is that most of the big strategic decisions that it feels like you're making as a group, like they slow you down, and usually if you're working in these fast cycles, you don't need to be totally right. In fact, you can just in a lot of the cases, if it's close, just flip a coin. It doesn't really matter which way you go, as long as you go. Because if you're working in fast cycles, you're going to get a chance to make that decision again very soon. And you're going to be in a much better position to make that decision next time because you will have had some very useful customer contact. So a facilitation technique, if a team is really, really stuck, is we call it a sky vote. So it's like the sky gets to make the choice. So you get everybody in the team to point to the sky, and then you say, on 3, you are going to point to the person who you want to make the decision, and it can't be you. And then you go 1, 2, 3, and everybody points, and whoever has the most people pointing to them, they get to make the call, and that's it. It's like, great, you make the decision right now. And then of course, if there's a tie in a sky vote, then you just, as a facilitator, you go, okay, it's you. You just pick the person closer to you. Right. But it's just to point out, like, that if a team like that is really stuck because they really think this is super important, I really have to get this like customer profile right, or we really have to pick the right learning goal or whatever, and you're like, nope, it's more important that you get out and learn, because in 25 minutes you're going to make this decision again. So then you just go, okay, we're going to do a sky vote, guys. We're going to let the sky decide. Yeah, so I've used that technique a few times. Any other questions? Or any other feelings? Okay. I think the same applies for you. Like, just give it a run. It's, trust the deck. You don't need to overthink it too much. Just deliver it, and you'll get the feedback. Rita just did it for the first time, right? And she got really good feedback. It's and then of course, having done it once, then you'll know what you want to improve, and when we look at the feedback, and you'll see the things that you want to improve. But I wouldn't worry too much. On Sunday, what day is it today? Yesterday. Yeah, she did it yesterday. Yeah, so yeah. Oh, so the other thing is, if you want, and I would quite like this. You're doing it on Wednesday, right? Yeah. So, if I can, like, if we can do a Hangouts call, or Skype or WhatsApp call, even audio only if that's necessary, like through phones. But it would be good to have, like, if I can sort of observe, because then I can be there as your support, and also I've never seen this delivered by somebody that's not me. So being able to like have a video link in and see how it's going would be helpful for me to improve it as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, whatever works, right? But I figured like a Hangouts call is probably the easiest thing, or a Skype call. I'm not really on Skype these days, but whatever works. Just to make it easy. It's just like set up a computer or a phone. That's a phone. If it's a phone, it's either case you plug it into the wall so it can run all day, and then I'll just be there on the other side.
What language is she?
If you want.
What language is she teaching in?
Oh yeah, what language are you doing it in? Yeah. Okay. Cool. No, I think everyone's doing it in English. Yeah. 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 So how do you feel? Okay. Yeah. That's definitely going to be. I've done so many iterations of this. You have no idea. Like, I've been running it so many times where I've not answered any questions without following these sort of general rules of thumb. So like, people will ask questions and I'll be like, that's a very good question. what do you guys think? And I'll like just totally do that and not be the expert entrepreneur, right? And just be like, I don't know. What do you guys think? And yeah, it's we've run it enough times now that it's yeah, it'll hold you up. So okay. Oh, so you only have three. Okay. Yeah. So you're in Vienna, right? Um. I wish I'd known. So where are they? Where are people signing up to? Are they signing up to our website? Okay. Okay. We should look at some of the stats, but I could put the word out to see if anybody here can put the word out. It's a bit late now, but maybe we get one or two signups. Do you know these guys? So, yeah. So I know Eves from way back, but I could ask. If you want, I can ask Eve if he can promote it. Okay. Let's see. Do they have any events coming up? It's gonna because it's pretty active for the summer. This week is totally dead for them. Okay. I'll tweet him now, and Floor as well. And let's talk. So afterwards, let's plan to talk to do like a retrospective on it. So I'll share with you the feedback. You can look it through by yourself, but we should look at it together, like the day afterwards. And oh, lost you. Yeah, we should look at it. Yeah, we should look. Yeah. So just thing afterwards, let's do a retrospective the day after on Thursday. So let's take a look at the feedback together, and then. Okay. Okay. So when makes sense? Yeah, it's doubtful. Yeah, but I mean, if we even take 20 minutes somewhere before you go, that'll still be useful. It's just if we wait till like, yeah, like what time you? Oh, okay, super early. And are you getting? Yeah, I guess it's a direct flight from Vienna, Warsaw. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, why don't do you have a? Can you just send me a local phone number and I can just? Could I just phone you when you're on the bus? Yeah, let's just do that. Yeah, because then we just take 20 minutes, half an hour, talk through the feedback, and also I want to understand the promotion because the big part of this experiment was seeing how you guys promote it and seeing what works and what doesn't. So we can talk through that. We can talk through that afterwards. Okay. All right, cool. So yeah, so maybe speak to you and feel. Yeah, no problem. And feel free to just call me whenever, if even tomorrow, if you're looking through stuff or whatever, and you have any questions. Just call me. Cool. All right. Take it easy, Anna. Yep. All right. Cool. All right. Thanks. Yep. Have a good night. Bye.